This is our extra credit video project. I'm Donovan.
I'm David.
And I'm Anthony. And one thing I would like to let you guys know is that COD does an amazing job by getting models. This was my grandma that donated her veins and arteries to College of the Desert, and they bought her out for a whopping $4,000.
Can't put a price on life.
Next, we have the arteries of the head and neck. I'm going to describe what they are and how they branch off from each other. So starting off, we have the vertebral arteries, which branch off from the subclavian, which would be this portion, the posterior part of the neck. And from there, they form into the basilar arteries, which form by the merging of the vertebral arteries. After that, we have the internal carotid. It's kind of hard to see on the diagram. And from the internal carotid artery, they branch to form the common carotid arteries. Just above the internal arteries, we have the ophthalmic artery, which branches from the internal carotid to the eyes. After that, we have the external carotid arteries, which in this diagram would be C, and the external branch of the common carotid, A. After that, we have a superior thyroid artery. You could kind of see from here that would go into the thyroid gland, which is just below the lingual artery. The lingual artery is the next branch up off the extended of the carotid. Next, we have the facial artery. And the facial artery is from the extension of the carotid towards the mandible. After that, we have the occipital artery. And the occipital artery is from the extension of the carotid to the posterior part of the head. Next, we have the maxillary artery, which is from the extension of the carotid towards the maxilla. As we can see, it's more internal in this diagram. And last but not least, we have the superficial temporal artery. The superficial temporal artery is superior extension of the external carotid.
Next up, we'll go over the arteries of the thoracic and abdominal cavities, which include your internal thoracic, the anterior intercostals, your superior thoracic, your thoracoacromial, the common hepatic, the right gastric, your gastroduodenal, your right gastric epiploic, your hepatic proper, the splenic, the left gastroepiploic, left gastric, your superior mesenteric and inferior mesenteric, the renal, and gonadal arteries.
Now we're going to move on to the thoracic vessels. All right, the internal thoracic artery.
It'll be this right.
Yep. Now the anterior intercostal arteries.
The ribs.
Exactly. The superior thoracic arteries.
Superior thoracic artery. Oh man. It's gonna be, I believe, this one.
Yep.
Alright.
Now which one is the thoracoacromial artery?
This one in the front by the shoulder.
All right. Now moving on to the abdominal cavities.
Perfect.
Arteries.
Yeah.
Want to pause it? Okay. All right. Now which one is the common hepatic arteries?
It's gonna be right in here.
Exactly. The right gastric artery.
Right gastric is gonna be this side, this little one.
Yep. The gastroduodenal artery.
It's gonna be the one that converts into two.
Yep. The right gastropoplic artery.
This one right in here.
Now the hepatic artery proper.
Hepatic proper is gonna be right up in there, next to the portal vein.
Yep. Now the splenic artery.
It's gonna be the arteries that go to the spleen.
Now the left gastropoplic artery.
This other part right here.
Yep. And now the left gastric artery.
The other smaller part right in there.
Exactly. Now the superior mesenteric arteries.
This front one here.
And now which one's the inferior?
This back one.
And the renal arteries.
The renal go to the kidneys, so they're right up in there.
And last but not least, the gonadal arteries.
Gonadal and these little tiny ones right here.
Alright.
Oops. Perfect.
Now we just have the upper limbs. And next, we're going to be going over the arteries for the upper and lower limbs. First off, we have the axillary artery. And then we have the lateral thoracic artery. After that will be the subscapular artery. Then the anterior circumflex-femoral artery and the posterior circumflex-femoral artery. And there will be the brachial artery. After that will be the profunda brachii artery. Then after that will be the radial artery. Then the radial recurrent artery, which is attached to the radial artery. Then it'll be the ulnar artery. And then after that will be the ulnar recurrent, which is attached to the ulnar. And then after that will be the common interosseous artery. Then the deep palmar arch. And then the superficial palmar arch. After that, the lower limbs, we have the common iliac arteries, then the internal iliac arteries, along with the external iliac arteries. Followed by, we have the femoral arteries. After that, we'll have the popliteal arteries, and then the posterior tibial artery, and then the anterior tibial arteries. After that will be the dorsal pedis artery, along with the accurate artery. And last but not least, will be the perineal fibular artery. All right, upper limb vessels. The axillary artery.
Axillary artery, 45.
All right, the lateral thoracic artery.
Lateral thoracic artery, right here.
Yep. Subscapular artery.
Subscapular artery, right here.
The anterior circumflex humeral artery.
Anterior circumflex humeral.
The posterior circumflex humeral artery.
Posterior circumflex humeral.
Now the brachial artery.
Brachial artery.
Now the profunda brachii artery.
Profunda brachii.
Now the radial artery.
The radial.
The radial recurrent artery.
Radial recurrent artery.
The ulnar artery.
The ulnar artery.
Ulnar recurrent artery.
Ulnar recurrent.
The common interosseous artery.
Common interosseous.
The deep palmar arch.
Deep palmar arch is on the inside. It's kind of hard to point out.
Now the superficial palmar
Superficial is on the top. These are the lower limb vessels. Starting off with the common iliac arteries.
Oops, right in here.
In the description
The leg.
is where the aorta splits at the pelvis into these. Cool. Next, we have the internal iliac artery,
Which is gonna be this one right here.
which splits on the inside of the common iliac.
Yep.
Then we have the external iliac, which splits to the outside of the leg. Next, we have the femoral artery, which is the external iliac becomes femoral in thigh. Next, we have the popliteal artery, as he is pointing at, which is the name of the femoral artery in the knee. Next, we have the posterior tibial artery,
Posterior's back.
which is the medial posterior branch of the popliteal. Correct. Then we have the anterior tibial artery, which is the anterior branch of the popliteal. Next, we have on top of the foot the dorsal pedis artery, which is an extension of the anterior tibial artery of the foot. After that, we have the arcuate artery, which is a dorsal anterior anastomosis.
Looks like a circle.
And last but not least, the perineal fibular artery, which is the lateral posterior branch of the popliteal.